Hi, everyone. Welcome to Creative Spirit, where we explore the creative muse within us. And today, I'd like to introduce you, or maybe you already know her well through her work and her teaching, Jane Camp. She's a professor of art at Heartland Community College. And she is so excited to share with us today that she will be opening a show at the McLean County Arts Center in Bloomington, Illinois on January 12th. And the opening reception is from 5 to 7 p.m. that night if you'd like to join her. The title of the show, Water, is involved. And I have been following Jane's work for quite some time, probably several years. And I know that photography is one of her main expressive qualities, and we get to know who she is through her work. She also has other medium that she uses and expresses herself, and maybe we'll get to that today, but today we're really going to focus on her show. Water is involved. So welcome, Jane. So glad to have you here today.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So, thinking about what you do and what you're planning to share with all of us, would you like to give us a little preview of some of the pieces that you're going to have and tell us a little bit about how that came together for you?
I would love to share this experience. I've always loved the Great Lakes. My parents lived up in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, during part of my life, and I lived up there during the summers when I was in college. And that's what really kind of spoke to me about the Great Lakes. Um, And so always wanted to get back there. That was in my 20s, and I'm 60 now. So, I traveled up there since this time that I did this trip, but I wrote for a sabbatical through Heartland Community College to take 10 different cameras and go around the Great Lakes and photograph them, really focusing on the water and to try to demonstrate how different cameras really incorporate what we see in different ways. Most people think of photography as the truth, and I would say, it's just another interpretation of our world, as we're all interpreting the world around us all the time. We look at things and we respond to it in a certain way, and cameras do the same thing. So what you're seeing now is two of those images, and at any given site that I chose to take photographs of, I was lugging around all my camera equipment and using a variety of cameras. I narrowed down for my exhibition, which images really spoke to me the most, that you could see the relationship of where I was taking the photos the clearest so that you can kind of have this compare and contrast experience. So I use digital and analog cameras, and some of them are higher end and some of them are lower end. They are actually toy cameras. So the two images I have up here looking at is I used a mirrorless digital camera, which is kind of all the latest rage. They're smaller oftentimes. They make less noise because traditional digital cameras had a mirror that would come down so that you could see what was going to be recorded. And then when you press the shutter release button, the mirror would come up and out of the way. So there was always a clicking sound. Mirrorless don't have that, on how they're recording that image. So it's quieter experience when you use that. And that's the image on the left. The image on the right then, totally different other type of camera called a Holga camera. It uses film, and it was meant to be a toy camera made in China. $40 camera. Now it's $40. Initially, it was much cheaper. And I load film into this. And so I don't know what I'm going to get with analog or film photography, unlike digital, in which you can look back up on the screen. And that's how I learned photography anyway, is through film. I'm old enough that we didn't have digital. And I kind of like the surprise of um, developing film and seeing what I get and then printing it. So the image on the right is totally, completely developed film in a traditional darkroom and then printed in a traditional darkroom. And then I used a negative carrier that's kind of roughed out on purpose to kind of get those rough edges because I like that kind of grittier quality on that.
Mhm.
And any rate, both of them, I just really enjoyed the images. The lakes themselves, the Great Lakes, if you haven't been, you got to go. Just the movement. Most people always talk about the oceans and going to the oceans, but the lakes themselves are so, I don't know, evocative. I mean, they're very intriguing to me. And just watching water is that soothing part of uh, seeing, big expanses of water in general that I enjoy about that. But these are the first two images that I kind of made that relationship after I came back from each trip. So I went through around all 5 Great Lakes, and this is Lake Erie from the Canadian side, by the way.
Let's see what else you have in here for us.
Yes,
Whoops, my apologies.
it's okay.
There we go.
So on one of the first trips that I went on, anytime you go out into nature, and I know you're a big nature lover as well, which is also something I really enjoy. I went around Lake Superior, and this is around Grand Martis. And what happened was I had never experienced a forest fire before in my life. You read up on it, you see it in the news. And I don't know, my little naive self, even at this age, thought, well, that's mainly California. You hear about in news
Right.
the forest fires, but this is actually in Minnesota. And all of a sudden, I had taken pictures earlier part of the day, and you'll see those in my exhibition when the fire didn't exist, when it was the blue sky. This was during the day. This was not, these aren't enhanced in any way. This is what it actually looked like. And so on the left is the DSLR stands for digital single lens reflex camera. That's the typical, camera that a lot of digital people use. It's heavier, bigger lenses, more expensive. That I took of how it looked over the water, this weird orange color. It was very surreal. It was like being on another planet. On the right, I used a very inexpensive panoramic film camera. So it's analog again. So I loaded the film in there. I had less control over the exposure, how much light would strike that film. And, but, again, one of my 10 cameras that I used, and I took, again, from a similar location, that shot. So the one on the right, again, is totally processed in the dark room. I'm just using black and white film. I like the contrast of black and white against color. So that's why I mean, obviously in analog film, you could get color film, but I really like the black and white to contrast with my digital camera equipment. And
Mhm.
this is of the Greenwood fire then that happened in 2021. I believe it was August, sometime in August, but very surreal, actually hard to be in after a while. I mean, we've just this last summer got some of the effects of the forest fires from Canada,
Mhm.
and the air quality or whatever. But, I mean, this is a once in a lifetime, sorry to say, opportunity for a photographer, which was amazing to me. It was just it's very surreal.
The one on the left has that golden tone, that copper
Mhm.
quality to the light that's on the rocks and in the water. Is that a product of the fire?
Yes,
Oh.
that's the way the sky. These, I really, in all my photography, I do not overly edit.
Hmm.
So by that I mean I don't, I want to, I know photography is believed as the truth. So I understand that concept. even now, even when we realize there's Photoshop out there and it's highly manipulated, images that we see on the internet and different social forums, still people want to believe that type of communication more directly.
Mhm.
I don't want to overly edit even my digital, even though I'm capable of it. Now, in the darkroom, you could do some things. I can control contrast or whatever, but I'm not enhancing the color or doing anything tricky to make that look. I really want the experience to be more pure to what I experienced as the photographer on that.
You know, it's interesting you should say that about these pieces that you took pictures of. You've said that about your portrait work as well, when you take pictures of people for different events or just in daily life, that you want them to look like they really look in real life. And so, is that the same concept that you're bringing to this?
Well, my philosophical belief, I mean, that you can't help but carry through, hopefully, in our work, whatever work we choose, is that we respond to the world, that we're not monologuing, that we're really
Right.
dialoguing all the time, whether it's with people or with nature. And so, I come in with an idea of what I would like to capture, but I'm trying to really respond to the environment itself. And the same is true for people. The authenticity, I think, is important to me. I mean,
Mhm.
what photographers are trying to do now, and I wish they would do more of, because I used to work for a local newspaper here. When you highly manipulated something, you would have to call it a photo illustration so that it was obvious then to the viewer that they're not viewing a form of reality. And in fact, if you look at documentary photographers, they can do very little to alter that, or their reputation is skewed. Because photojournalism, for example, we want to believe what we see in photojournalism, but now with all the editing tools, you could change that. So, I think it's a matter of uh, integrity to always respond to an environment or a person without doing anything too crazy. So, in portraiture, I'm really against touching up as we age too much of that. There's nothing wrong with a wrinkle. There's nothing wrong with the crevices here in the earth are, you have the smoothness of the water juxtaposed against this really rough texture. And I think that's what makes it so interesting to view.
That's really interesting to me that your photojournalism background, with that strong ethic of providing as much truth as the cameras will allow, you bring to the work in nature that you do. And that gives us a sense of the dynamic that you're experiencing when you're there. The sense of the water. I know there were a couple photos that you shared with me. I could almost feel the spray hit my face because it was just so well defined, and the contrast in color and form was there. So thank you for bringing this to us, because it gives us an experience that you had when you were there, or as close to the experience as what you had. So would you like to go to the next one that I flipped
Yeah,
by first and then we had to backtrack?
yeah, that's
There
fine.
we go. Lake Superior.
Yes. Again, this was farther up at the Picture Rocks, very much higher up when I was in, kind of went over the top there to from Michigan over the top to the left there, Picture Rocks
Mm-hmm.
National Park. So one of the things as an artist, I'm a two-dimensional artist. I would like to say, I'm good with that. The 3D thing was always confounded me to make something in 3 dimension. And so I'm a painter and a drafts person too, so I drawing. And one of the things I like to do is mixed media. So this is a great opportunity for me to do more mixed media. Is I will print something. I used a fisheye lens on my Holga, so that's how it got that circle, and took this photo and then drew on it. So I used color pencils this time. I also have a specific type of paint that I use for photos, but this is all done in color pencil. So I hand color it. So I developed the film, I worked in the darkroom, hand printed it, and then I hand colored it. So I really like that kind of scope that fisheye lens will do, that we're peering through something. It gives us a different sense of space instead of the peripheral really spreading around us. This forces us to kind of go in a little bit more and keeps that experience kind of like almost putting a blanket over your head as you're looking at that, which I like. So I like my images to create that, really push you closer to them and give you a different sensation, and then open up and push you back so that it expands into your peripheral vision as well. So,
And it would be a lovely subject for a quiet meditation,
yes.
just to be able to spend some time dreaming and imagining and experiencing. And the colors are so subtle and soft.
Thank you. I'm definitely inspired by, I go to a lot of art museums. I like to see a lot of other types of artwork and artists myself. And to me, that is the fascination. It's listening to music, it's reading a book, viewing artwork, and really giving yourself the opportunity to look. That is so interesting to me. I mean, even my own work. I remember one of my students said, well, if you hang your own work on the wall, isn't it kind of like egotistical? And I'm like, that was like the first time I heard that, probably maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and a student said that to me. I never thought of it that way. I thought of it as reflective. This gave you a chance to reflect about who you are and what you think because you made something concrete. Just like writing does the same thing. It gives you a concrete way to revisit how you think or feel about something. Making something does the same thing. And that's what all artists are hoping for too, is that somebody else responds to what we made and like makes it reflective for them, sometimes just in appreciation, sometimes in enhancing the way somebody might think or perceive if they go back out into nature, or help them inspire to create something themselves as well. I think all three of those are going on in an artist's desire to exhibit their work and have people look at their work, really look at it.
Or take some classes and learn more and get some guidance from you as well. Um,
Yeah. One of the things I'm doing in regards to that, so
mhm,
every fall, then I started last year, I wanted to bring community people into, that's why I wanted to teach at a community college. I purposely didn't seek out teaching at four-year schools because I wanted a mixture of people who just wanted to learn our craft, and people who wanted maybe to go on to a four-year school and wanted that degree. So I'm teaching night classes in the falls. So I've been alternating. I teach this coming in 2024, I'll be teaching photography again at night. This last fall, I taught drawing one at night to try to get the community back into having that. And what I like about, you can take classes through community art centers like McLean County or Art Center or whatever, but those are usually short term, maybe 6 sessions or whatever. It takes a long time to acclimate to a medium, and people don't give themselves that opportunity anymore. We're such a fast-paced world. Everybody, I'm
right.
going to watch something really quickly, and this is a slower way to get those technical skills, but then you get it in with a group of people. And I think that's really meaningful too. So you have that shared creative experience of other people learning the same time that you're learning, that I think is so enriching.
Takes a lot of time, I think, as you mentioned, to mature into the medium that you're using and being able to explore all of its capabilities and its flaws and allowing that. One thing you said that really struck me, because I do some things with watercolor, and I think you do too, is that the analog often gives you the surprise. You're
Yeah.
not sure what's going to happen, like the water and the color on the canvas or on the paper. And then you see it and you appreciate it and make it work. And I see that in your work too. And it's just lovely. How many, we'll do a little numbers game here. How many photos do you think you took on this sabbatical to all the Great Lakes?
Thousands.
Thousands.
In the show, trying to narrow that down, by the way, that was like, rah, it was mind-boggling.
Hmm.
Because you're looking through all of them and sorting. Here's my one thing though, my biggest suggestion for anybody, and I think this is true in life too. If it doesn't resonate with you, set it to the side a few minutes and then bring it back another day, another time. But don't keep necessarily everything. You have to edit down to a manageable size. I think with digital and with our world right now that we're so overwhelmed. We have so many choices.
Hmm.
It's like going into a big box store. You don't even know where to go. Editing it down and compartmentalizing and organizing in a way that your process becomes clearer. So I edited down for this exhibition. I think I'm at like 64 or 65 pieces that I narrowed down to,
Okay.
out of all of those. But throughout my life, I have tons of negatives. I have tons of work. My goal is if I ever retire to go back into those things and maybe revisit some more things too,
Hmm.
and that. But
Because sometimes you go back and you say, I wonder why I put that one aside.
yeah,
Yeah.
well,
Because it speaks to you now.
I think every 10 years we're different people. We've
Hmm.
evolved. I don't know why the 10-year mark for me has always been true, but every 10 years I look back in a different way and I just see, oh, I was, where I was thinking and uh, how I painted at that time. And the best advantage of being older to me is just understanding myself a little bit more so that I'm just more fluid. It's not as herky jerky as my first creative processes were. I'm not stuck in self-doubt a lot. I, through my practice of yoga, for example, I think just really helps me with my work for sure. And other things that I do. Yeah.
I find that too, and that's why I'm drawn to a lot of your work because it provides that meditative quality where you can sit and really spend some time experiencing what it is that you brought to us. But you said something a few minutes ago about your earliest experiences. So can we dig into that a little bit? Like, what are your memories of when you started to create and express yourself through creative media, because you have multiple ways of doing it? And when do you think you made a decision that this was your life path?
I think that's such an interesting question. And because I talk to students all the time, and some students really know their direction, and some people who don't. And I think that's a very valid place that a lot of people are in. Choosing to make a living at it and choosing to do it are two different things. So I'm going to
That's
talk about
right.
choosing to do it, from the very beginning.
Hmm.
And from the very beginning, I was wired this way. I mean, I remember as a child, if I could, I was always a maker. That's how I would have described myself. I wanted to make things. If you gave me a choice between, I mean, I like to read, but then a craft project, yeah, I read, but I was always wanting to make things.
Hmm.
you know, I for sure, even more so than maybe being outside, which kind of surprises me now because now if I don't get out into nature, I feel like a plant wilting. But as a child, I just wanted to make things. And so, at that time you could buy kits, and my parents, did that kind of thing. And when I was in grade school, and even we didn't have a junior high, going through grade school completely to eighth grade, there wasn't a lot of art training at all. But learning how to draw is just learning how to see. So if you
Mhm.
slow yourself down, anybody can draw if you have eye-hand coordination. So it's not talent that makes someone an artist, in my opinion. Talent is work over and over and over again, but it comes from a love of it that
Mhm.
just never makes it seem quite as like hard work. I call it, to my students, it's art work. There is work involved in
Right, right. Hmm.
but it's and so, early on, I can't remember never wanting to make things. So, when you get into high school, and you think, okay, now what am I going to do? That's when that whole turn on, trying to become an adult. You obviously are now out of childhood and you're moving towards adulthood, and what do you want to do? And those are the scariest times, I think, in the evolution of a person that you can be, and thinking about that. And, while I was a good student, it never occurred to me not to do something in art. It's kind of silly. But at that time, I thought I could be a graphic designer, which was the farthest thing. Graphic design is very tight and linear, and I'm just
Hmm.
more
Hmm.
expressive. So, I went to college thinking that's what I was going to do for a living, but got out of college and realized that that wasn't the avenue for me. So, again, as I tell my students, just because you go to college for something doesn't mean you have to be locked into that. Be a
That's right.
creative person is to be open to a variety of opportunities, to be really respond to your world. And I did art therapy related work in a nursing home, and that was really intriguing. So I thought maybe I'd go into that, and I went back to grad school. And in grad school, because I was older by then, I was what, 25, 26, so I had some time outside. It took me my maturity of a person to hit with the time of studying with people
Hmm.
that really influenced me. And I got a teaching assistantship. And that's when I really decided I wanted to teach on the college level, that experience. But it took me a long time. And other people take much longer than that. Everybody thinks that they're going to find their path at 18 or 19. And you're
Yeah.
just so young, you know.
Yeah. And
And
the whole college experience you mentioned, and going to school for a specific degree or a discipline of some type, it really feeds into who you are. And it may be one of those missing pieces or fundamental foundation pieces that you need to be able to stand on later
mhm,
and decide how things are going to emerge and evolve for you. And I go back to the photojournalism mini convo we had a few minutes ago. And that comes through in your search for truth in your images. And there are times when we have experiences and events in our lives, and we never really know how it's going to fit or what it's going to bring. But sometimes, somewhere, it all kind of integrates into something really pretty amazing and marvelous. And we get to express who we are
yeah.
through what it is that we are choosing to do with the kind of passion that you have for art.
Yeah, I've had many teachers. You're one of them, really. And always being open for your next teacher to kind of lead you, studying something. And again, it's all about that dialogue, going in with a drive.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I really love this, or this seems interesting, and making sure you're always trying different things. Now, photography, interestingly enough, I was more of a painter. And I took photography in college then. It was introduced to me by my professor who's still working in this community, Kevin Strandberg, by the way. And it's kind of a fun turn of events. Mind you, he was young at the time too, because he was fresh out of grad school when he started teaching. So I don't want to make him sound, I mean, all of us as we're aging,
Right, right.
like really super old.
We need some perspective on that.
Yeah,
Yes.
I wanted to take better photos of my paintings at the time when I took photography. That was my initial motivation. But once I started working in the dark room with its low light and quiet and water, and I don't know, just something about it. I just loved it. I just loved it. So I'm still painting. I still draw and do other things for sure. But when I chose a sabbatical, I definitely wanted to get back to the Great Lakes. I wanted to, challenge myself with more. I used a view camera too, which I hadn't done for a long time. And yeah, I didn't put a view camera image into this PowerPoint, but they'll be up at the exhibition.
Okay, great.
I got a few good ones, but it was very challenging. It's something, again, I hadn't done it for a long time, but I wanted to make sure that I hate to use the word fail. I don't like that. I used to call them experiences a little less than successful.
That's right. There you go.
You
That
know,
that keeps the door open for it to be resonant at some point in
yeah.
time. Mhm.
But a view camera uses a single sheet of film loaded into like Ansel Adams would do,
Mhm.
and there were
Mhm.
4x5 sheets, and you load them in, and you do one exposure at a time, and then you turn the plate around, and you really have to calculate how much light you let in to strike it. And the one thing that's really hard about that is I didn't factor in the wind and the sand. So the wind and the sand with doing those things made it a little bit more challenging. Anyway, I learned a lot, which was the purpose of my sabbatical.
Right.
When they allow sabbaticals in higher education, it isn't just a free time in which you don't work. You just get to concentrate on the field of study so that you can bring that back into the classroom,
Mhm.
So it was great. I made sure I challenged myself. I made sure I didn't just choose the things that I could do really well and then go out them and just try to do them even better. I also chose cameras that I hadn't used in a while and that would push me.
So many more pieces are going to be available, and I'm going to go to the next slide so people can see again that you have an opening at McLean County Arts Center in Bloomington, Illinois on January 12th. And there'll be a reception where they can meet you, right? From
Yeah.
5 to 7 and maybe get a little more information and chat for a while about some pieces that may speak to them. And
Or ask some
before we
questions or just
right,
listen and
yeah,
in silence and experience either or. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So before we close, I would just like to ask you a couple more questions that might help guide people to learn a little bit more about your work. So you do have a website, and on your website, I know you have some of your photographs and some pieces that might be in the show, but what else do you have out there that people can enjoy at Jane Camp Art?
Yeah. A lot of my drawings, I tried to label them. I actually have one section labeled just my sabbatical journey on there, but I have drawings and paintings. I do commission work, upon occasion. This isn't a major funding source for me. I teach for that, but these are my like little babies that I'm trying to find a home for.
Right.
They're part of communication, sure, as an artist, you're making it for yourself and that reflective quality, but you're hoping that artwork goes out into the world, just like this podcast, goes out into the world and speaks to somebody.
That's
I've lectured about on art appreciation courses too. I've taught that at Heartland. And the one thing that I always recommend to people is live with real art in your space, not just mass produced artwork. I think when you have something that is made by somebody, and resident of this area or, off of Etsy, there's great places too where you can get handmade things, that it enlivens your environment. It makes you more engaged in the world. So, my whole house, you're in my studio right now, my drafting table behind me, but I have artwork everywhere, and it's not just mine. I trade artwork. I bought a lot of artwork that I hang all the time. And I really try, for my purposes, I try to sell in a reasonable way. When you go to McLean County Arts Center, know that any purchase made there, that 40% of that purchase goes to that non-for-profit art center to keep it going.
Oh,
And
that's
so
good to know.
artist only gets, in this case, me, 60% of that sale. So again, McLean County Arts Center is this great gem in our community. And a lot of communities have art centers that are non-for-profit, that offer some classes, that are rotating exhibitions. And I applied for this to get in, and I was so happy. Doug Johnson was in grad school, who is the director of um, McLean County Arts Center when I was in grad school. So, at any rate, my title, Water is Involved. I always like to have things open-ended a little bit, and I found that phrase out in this world somewhere and researching water and trying to come up with a title. And because it's not always just, it is, water is in everything that you're going to see in my exhibition, but there's other things in nature that I was playing off of that I thought was interesting as well.
Well, I really appreciate the time that we've had today and learning so much about you. And I hear loud and clear that your art is an expression of who you are, your inner being, and it's truly a creative spirit. And I feel, and I'm sure those that join you to talk with you on the 12th of January at McLean County Arts Center, or they visit another time and see the show. Speaking of which, how long will the show be up?
It's up through February 21st. So sometimes
Okay.
I'll go to a reception and maybe talk to the person, but I like to go back when there's not as many people and just really look. Has been part of my way that I like to work, And if you don't get that chance, I hope that you get a chance to look at my website. Everything's for sale, anymore if I have it. Drawings or paintings, they may be gone, but and all it does is fund my constant creative, making my next piece at this point. So, yeah.
And I think your website also has a contact form
Yes.
where people
Yes.
can get in touch with you about anything that they may
Sure.
be interested in.
Yeah.
So thank you,
Thank
and I
you.
appreciate all your time and your great knowledge and your expressive spirit. Thank you, Jane Camp.
You're welcome.